Hey, what's up, Notjust developers? Welcome back to our channel and welcome to our 2-day AI app challenge. What's going to happen during the next 2 days? We together are going to build a full stack AI application, something similar to how ChatGPT works. We're going to build that with React Native, with Expo Router, and we're also going to integrate with OpenAI models in a secure way from our small backend that is going to power our AI chat application. I know that a lot of you have amazing ideas for AI applications, and with this tutorial, with this challenge, we would like to help you set up everything, understand how everything works, how to connect everything, every single piece securely, and how to build this AI chat application. In the second day, we're going to get into a little bit more advanced stuff, so stay tuned because we have prepared a lot for you. By building this, by following this challenge together with me, you are going to learn a lot of stuff. First of all, we're going to learn about how to build beautiful and modern UIs with NativeWind, how to use Expo Router to implement navigation with custom side or drawer menu, how to use the API routes to build a backend and how to also deploy it to production, how to use TypeScript, how to use Zustand for the global state management of our messages and how to persist that data so that when you reopen the application, you have the same chat history with the messages there. We're going to use NativeWind to style our components with Tailwind CSS classes. So if you're coming from web, this is going to be perfect for you. If you're coming from mobile, NativeWind is going to be very easy once you get the hang of it to work and to style components with. And we're going to do the OpenAI API integration to integrate our chat completions and images and audio a bit later and so on. We're going to build the chat history with persisting the full conversation across sessions, and we're going to work on the Markdown rendering to make sure that the answers from AI are formatted beautifully. This is a 2 days challenge, so today and tomorrow we're going to build this application and we're gonna start slowly covering everything step by step, very beginner friendly to help you get started with building your maybe first AI application. But by day 2, we're going to get into some advanced topics that if you are more intermediate or advanced, you're going to find them useful as well. So what do I want from you during this challenge? I encourage you to follow along, try to build this application yourself and learn new concepts, new stuff, because I'm pretty sure there is going to be stuff for you to learn. And think about your own application. Try to apply the learnings to your own application, even though this is kind of optional and it's on you. We're just here to encourage you, to give you a push to build that. And most importantly, have fun with new technologies, experiment, try new things, and enjoy here together with our notjust.dev community. This is not a hackathon, it's not a competition, you're not competing with anyone, it's just for us to learn and to build amazing stuff as a community. So that is the purpose of this challenge, is to encourage you to follow along, learn, and maybe apply it to your projects if you have some ideas. However, we have a little surprise for you, and one lucky viewer, participant of this challenge is going to win a place in our exclusive summer bootcamp. We're preparing something amazing this summer, starting from 16th of June. It's going to be a 8 weeks intensive React Native bootcamp, a learning experience that we haven't done any time in the past. And this is going to be 8 weeks of intensive React Native, of building applications, and you're going to be coached by me and the Notjust.dev team together with Lucas and others from our team. We're going to have only 25 students, so one lucky winner that we're going to choose randomly from everyone that signed up for this challenge is going to be one of those 25 students, which is going to work together with me and the team during 8 weeks during the bootcamp. If you want to learn more about the bootcamp, go to notjust.dev/bootcamp and find out more about what we are preparing, because we've been cooking hard during the last months to make this possible. It's going to be quite huge. Anyway, now back to our challenge. I think it's time to get started and we can roll the intro. As always, before we get started, we prepared a step-by-step guide that is going to be super helpful for you to use during this challenge. So go to notjust.dev/blog/AI app challenge, or find the link in the description below. And here you're going to get access to the asset bundle. And there you're going to find this Notion guide. You're going to receive this link on your email, open it up, and you're going to see that everything here is step-by-step with information of everything, even more explanation that you're going to find in this video. So this is a definitely must-have thing to follow along and to learn more about today's project. Speaking about the environment, that's the first thing that we need. We're going to use Expo and React Native, and the benefit of using Expo is that we need very minimal environment setup, because what I hate the most is when I start using a new technology and I spend like 4 hours setting up my environment just to see something working. With Expo, that's not the case. The only thing that we need is the notejust installed on our system. Most of developers already have Node.js, so if you have it, go ahead, you're ready to get started. The easiest way to run our mobile applications is going to be using the Expo Go. The Expo Go is available both on App Store and Play Store. Download on your physical device, and that's going to be enough for us to get started and build the application. There are some optional steps if you want to run the simulator or emulator. You can follow the guides here, but this is optional and you don't need it at this moment. And for the code editor, you can use VS Code. I'm going to use Cursor, which is a fork of VS Code with some AI tools, but this is all depending on you, like your personal preferences. Now, with that being said, let's go ahead and open the second lesson here. I think I'm going to do it like this. Is it live or premiere? It's live. If you want, I can start dancing, do something crazy. All right, so let's go ahead and create a new Expo project. And we're going to do that with the Create Expo App tool. Let's go ahead, or maybe I should demo like what we're going to build today. So here is the application. We can ask it to tell me a joke. We're going to have like nice animation for waiting the response. And here is the response. It's actually from OpenAI using API routes. And here we have a custom drawer. And every time we create a new chat room, it's going to store it as a new chat room. And it's going to persist this. So we can move through different chat histories. And everything is going to be super performant, super nice. And later we're going to also include the voice, audio, images, and much more. Let me bring this one here so I can see it better. This is demo. I'm going to move it out of the way for it not to, because we're going to start from scratch. Let me do it like this. Okay, perfect. Let's open up a new terminal. Zoom in for everyone to see. Let's navigate to our projects. And here, let's go ahead and use npx create-expo app at latest. We give it a name. What name? The AI chat clone. AI chat clone. And let's do -- template for us to choose the template that we want to start from. The default is nice, but it includes a lot of overhead. And if this is the first time you're building React Native apps or Expo, like you might get confused there. So I like to go blank TypeScript. Just scroll down until you select blank TypeScript, and then let's press enter. The blank TypeScript is simply going to be an empty project with TypeScript setup. Then we're going to set up Expo router, NativeWind, everything ourselves. for maximum personalization. Now that our project is ready, you can open it up in Visual Studio Code. I'm going to open it up in Cursor like this, and I don't need this terminal anymore. I'm going to put Cursor here. As I was saying, Cursor is the same kind of Visual Studio Code because it's a fork of VS Code, but it has like this AI chatting interface similar to Copilot, let's say. Let me see if I can close the chat. Yeah, I can. And what we have here, we have a app.tsx file, which is the entry point in our application. And what I want to do is I want to open a new terminal here in Visual Studio Code or in Cursor. And I want to do npm start to start the development server. I want to do that just because I want to see the application up and running, see what we have, if everything was initialized correctly, and then we can start setting up our dependencies. So I'm going to press I here to open it on my simulator. But as I was saying, you don't need the simulator. This is optional. And for that, you need Xcode. The easiest way, just download Expo Go on Android or iOS, and then simply scan this QR code. If you lost this in your terminal, just press C and it's going to clear everything in the terminal. And you're going to see back this menu with tools of how you can interact with your bundler and then the QR code that you can scan. If everything worked correctly, we should see on our device open up TSX to start working on your application. At the moment, app.tsx is the entry point. So if I go and edit this text here to hello world, it's going to automatically hot reload here without us having to rebuild or do anything extra. That's the magic of React Native. Perfect. Let me double check what else do I need to do for the setup. Verify the live updates to setting up the folder structure. Yeah, perfect. I like to keep all my components and all the code that I'm writing in the application in a source folder. Even though this is optional, I like to keep it that way because a React and a React Native application, as we are adding more libraries, we're going to have more configuration files. So I don't want to always look into this mess. I want to keep my source code in the source directory. And there, I like to prepare the components folder where we're going to write our reusable components. And I can already prepare the app folder. This app folder is going to make a lot of sense in a moment when we set up Expo Router, because that's where we're going to create the screens for our application. That's where Expo Router is going to look for the screens. Now that we have that, this is our folder structure. We can also help do a small step that will help us import stuff. Because by default, we're going to have to import components with a relative path. These double dots means go one folder up, one more folder up, and so on. And while this is working fine, it makes it hard to refactor and move around stuff because we are breaking relative paths. To fix that, we can go into the tsconfig and under compiler options paths, we can set up some path aliases, basically shortcuts to some folders. So under compiler options, I'm going to do here paths, and I'm going to say the first one is going to be @ and the star means everything, like everything that comes after @/. We're going to remap it to source, and the slash basically means everything else. So remapping this part to this part. And we can do the same with assets as well. If I'm not mistaken, that's how it is. Perfect. Now we're going to be able to import a bit easier our components. So yeah, with @/components, we're going to remap it at root folder, source, components, and so on. There is also one last step here, is the additional assets. These are some dummy data that are going to help us start working and building our components directly. So let's go ahead and download this asset.zip folder. Let's unzip it and then replace it with the assets folder from our project. So I'm going to come somewhere. Let me double check here. Assets. Where is it? Maybe it's this one. Let me double check. So basically I unzip the assets and I will simply drag and drop in the root of my folder and do copy folder and replace. And the new assets folder should have data and should have a chat history.json. This chat history is going to help us, as I was saying, before we work on the data structures and global state, we're going to work with JSON file to build some UIs with it. Perfect. And everything else is the same. Perfect. I think we are done with the setting up the new project, and we can go ahead and continue to the next lesson. I'm going to do, let me double check if everything is still working, because you see my server crashed. Yeah, I think it does. If I press R, it's going to reload. Yeah, everything is working. I'm gonna open a new terminal. I'm going to do git add, git commit, set up and the project. Perfect. Later, you're going to have access to all the commit histories as well. Let's go back and we're going to follow with setting up NativeWind. But before I do that, I want to say hello everyone who is joining us live. How are you doing, guys? I jumped right into the building. So in order to have a nice beginning, how are you doing? So many people joining. Is this a ChatGPT clone? More or less, yes. After a long time cooking something cool with Vadim. Yes, let's go. Is this the latest version? The latest version of what? The cursor? I think so. I just updated it. Okay. Can you specify any free alternative to get an LLM model I can use free through an API? I don't know of any free LLM models that you can use for an API, but you can hack together like downloading a local model and trying to use I think it's called Executorch or something like that. Not sure how production ready is that system to run locally on your phone LLMs, and it's definitely not going to be as good as remote ones, but for some specific scenarios that might be enough. Yeah, the OpenAI has a free tier and you can use that. Perfect. Let's go ahead and continue. And what we're going to do, as I was saying, is the next step is to set up NativeWind. First of all, what's NativeWind? NativeWind is a library that allows us to use Tailwind CSS classes to style our React Native components. Because by default, in React Native, we do not have CSS. By default, we are using JavaScript objects to style our components. Now with NativeWind, now like on the web, we have CSS, and there is this Tailwind library that is super popular and is very handy, and it comes with a bunch of pre-built classes that are easy to apply to our components without having to write CSS. Now, NativeWind is it's doing this very well, is allowing us to use this Tailwind in React Native. And then we have a very similar experience to styling and building UIs as we have on the web. So there is a couple of steps to configure. This might seem a little bit, it's a lot. I mean, there are a couple of steps that maybe will not make sense for a lot of you, but just let's try to follow it along step by step, and then we're going to have this beautiful experience after everything is set up. So let's open the Tailwind CSS. This is the actual Tailwind and where you will look for different classes that you can use. I'm going to show that to you a bit later, but now let's go ahead under NativeWind and let's click this link, the official documentation guide under NativeWind installation. We're gonna choose Expo and we're going to start installation with Expo. Let's go ahead and copy this command line to install NativeWind, React Native Animated, and so on. So I'm going to open the terminal, not the one that is running the server, or even that one. We can stop it by pressing Ctrl+C and use it to, Command-V, to install NativeWind, Tailwind CSS, React Native Animated, React Native Safe Area Context. That's the first step. The second step is to set up Tailwind CSS configuration. For that, we can simply run npx tailwind css init in our terminal, and that is going to create a new file in our project called tailwind config. We need to do some changes to this tailwind config, and the one that we need to do is the content. So the content, we're not going to do it similar to this one. We're going to simply say, hey, the content, yeah, maybe app.tsx, we're going to target it, but I'm going to apply this path to say that, hey, when Tailwind is trying to check what classes have been used in our components, it's going to look into these files that we specify in content. App.tsx is clear, but here we are saying look into the source directory, and then this pattern means like in any subdirectory of that source, any file with any name that has the extension, that's why we have a dot, that has an extension either GS, GSX, TS, or TSX, that's going to be files that where we support Tailwind classes. So that's why we have it here. Now, what else? Presets, do we need it? I think we do. So let's just copy this line with presets and let's put it under the content. It's going to, and that's it. Theme and plugins remains the same. Now we need to create a CSS file and add the Tailwind directives. The file name is going to be global CSS. We can create it here in the root folder, and inside the global.css, we're going to add these 3 lines. This is basically importing the Tailwind base, components, and utility classes. Okay, next step, babel.config. We need to adjust a little bit how Babel works, the configuration of it, but the problem is that we do not have babel.config here in our files. Well, that's because Expo is trying to hide a lot of configuration and use defaults whenever possible, but by doing npx expo customize, we can bring back those files and adjust them. I'm going to press space by having babel.config selected. I'm going to move down to metro config and also press space because we will adjust metro as well. Now I'm going to press enter and we're going to have 2 new files, the babel config and the metro. Let's start with babel config adjustments. If we go back into the documentation, we see that this is the presets. I think I'm going to just copy the whole presets and bring it back and replace these presets from here with these presets. Now the next step is metro config, and the metro config requires this import with NativeWind at the top. So let's go into metro config. At the top, we're going to import with NativeWind, And here we're going to simply say, we're going to wrap the config inside the with NativeWind. We're gonna link the input to global.css. And pay attention that it's referencing this global.css file, and they should be in the same folder, or if it's in a different folder, you have to adjust the relative path here. Going back, we need to import the CSS file in our app.js or tx. So inside app.tsx, at the top, we need to import global CSS. Going back, we need to modify the app.json for the web bundler metro. Let's do that as well. In the app.json, in the web, we can put bundler metro. And there is also a TypeScript setup. It's very easy, so I recommend doing it because it's as simple as creating a file with this name, nativewind-env.d.ts, and writing there this single line of code with exactly this syntax with triple slashes. That's important. And now by having that, we're going to have types support on the classes as well. Going back, I think in the installation, if I'm not mistaken, that was the last step. Using with modular wrappers or other bundlers. Perfect. Let's double check if everything is working. So to double check that, I'm going to go in app.tsx, and for this text, I'm going to provide a class name, and as a string, we can say text 3xl, and maybe text rad, or maybe, yeah, rad 500, and maybe text bold. And yeah, something like that. Or not text, but font bold. So if everything is working, after restarting the server with npm start, and here I recommend doing -- clear to clear the metro bundler because we adjusted some metro configuration. Now we cleared everything, we can press I or reload to reload the application. And if everything is worked fine, we should see these styles apply to the text by simply writing some class names here. And as you can see, it's indeed working. So now no longer do we have to write these styles, because with all of these JavaScript styles on the view, I can replace them. Look with what? With a class name, flex1, background color white is BG white, align item center is going to be items center, justify content center is going to be justify center. And we are back to this. So we no longer even need the style sheet here altogether. We can write the class names inline. Perfect. I love that. And everything is working. One more recommendation is, as you can see, if I start writing, for example, BG, and I have all of these colors and recommendation of different classes, this is coming from extension that is very handy to have. So if you go to extensions, search for Tailwind, and there is this Tailwind CSS IntelliSense that will provide auto completion for class names. Super handy because there are so many classes and I don't remember them all, and neither you will remember them all at the beginning. And the extension is going to help you memorize or find the class that you're looking for. And every time you are confused or you don't know what classes to use, you can go directly to the tailwindcss.com website and with a quick search find stuff. For example, padding. How do I add padding? I'm going to go here and I'm going to see, okay, it's P and then a number. Or yeah, PT for padding top, PR for padding right. And that way, slowly, you're going to learn all of these classes. So Tailwind CSS is a very helpful resource. Always use it when working with NativeWind. If I'm not mistaken, yeah, let's see what do we have else in the guide. Here you can experiment with adjusting from style sheet to NativeWind. You're gonna see how easy it is. You can explore more things with NativeWind by following the guide that we've prepared for you, for the textile background, for the padding and margins, for borders and shadows, for flexbox layout, responsive design as well, like with a simple, how is it called? Modifier, I think that's how it's called. You can apply different classes to different sizes of your device. So for example, in this case, on a small device, the text is going to be large, but on bigger devices it's going to be base. Or the other way around. Let me think about it. You're going to find it out, like just do that and maybe run it on web, and you're going to see how everything works. For example, with flex, row, and column, you can change whether the items are stacked on top of each other or in the same row, depending on the screen size. We can also add dark mode support, and to do that, we need to make sure that the user interface in our app.json is automatic. Automatic. That's definitely not how you pronounce it, but let's go ahead in app.json. User interface, here it's overridden to light. If I'm going to do this word that I'm going to learn how to pronounce, then we're going to support, like it's going to, the user interface is going to depend on the settings of the phone. So if the phone is in dark mode, it's going to be dark. If in light, in light. Then we can use the dark mode classes to set up different backgrounds. For example, we can set, let's go into our app.tsx and say that here the background is white, but on a dark phone, on a dark theme, I want the background to be black. Same thing with the text. I can do the text here, maybe let's go black, but on dark mode, I want this text to be white. So here we have light mode. If I'm going to switch this one, let me remember how do you switch that. Oh, here it is. With Command and Command Shift A, I can switch the theme of my emulator. And look how easy I have added dark mode support. Simply adding two, like background white for the light theme and background black for the dark theme. And the same for the text. Perfect. I love it. You can also define custom colors and themes because by default we have all of these things like text, red, and it has a system that goes from 50 to 950, where the 500 is somewhere in the middle, like the base color, and 900 is like a darker version of that color. It's very handy, like it gives you a lot of options, but you can also add here like primary color, accent color in our Tailwind config.js. So I'm gonna copy this from here and I can go in the Tailwind config, and under theme extend, I'm going to paste these colors for primary and accent. And in app.tsx, I can do here, hey, this text, I want it primary. Here we go. The background, I want it accent. Here we have it. And the name of a color is primary and accent, and it's going to be applied to all the possible colors that we can apply. In this case, we're applying it, the accent to the background as big G accent, in this case to the text, but you can also do it for like the border accent, and that's going to add a border and border 2, as you can see, and all the different things that that can get a color. So that's very handy. Yeah, text accent. And that's the quick introduction to NativeWind. I hope you enjoy it and you're going to use it in your applications. Let's go ahead and what? Text black. Let's go ahead and do git add, git commit, setup NativeWind. And before we move on, let me double check if there is any questions. Lucas, do we have any questions? Lucas is here in the chat helping you guys. So if you have questions, feel free to drop them in the chat.
We do have a few. You can check it out. I answer them.
Yeah. If you point me out to which one I should check.
In general, if you want, like I answered most of them, I think. About the themes you can check out.
Okay, so I see questions about, so we have to create two different class names, styles, one for dark and one for light. For a lot of cases, yes, but you can also create reusable components and reusable classes as well. You can create a reusable button that is going to handle this light and dark mode and then just simply reuse that component. And you can also create reusable classes, which I'm not sure if I'm going to get into that, but you can create like pre-built classes. For example, you can say this is a button, and you can apply for configuration different class names to that button. And let me remember if I can show that easily. I think extend, is it here, components? I don't think so. I just have to look into the documentation to check that. Maybe we can see it later, but it's very handy to create your own pre-built classes. Okay, perfect. Now that our NativeWind is set up, we're gonna go to the next step, and the next step is going to be Expo Router. So Expo Router, most of your applications are going to have multiple screens. So at the moment, we just have a sub.tsx, which is one component, one screen in our application. But if we want to enable the user to be able to go from a screen to another, to explore different chat rooms, and to have like maybe a sign up screen, in that case, we need a navigation system. A very common navigation system for the last, I don't know, more than 5 years was React Navigation. React Navigation brings native navigation components such as a stack screen that can go back and forth, like a drawer that comes from the side, the bottom tabs, and so on. React Navigation was perfect, but then came in Expo Router, which built on top of React Navigation and added a file-based navigation system. A file-based navigation system basically allows us to create files and folders, and Expo Router is taking care of configuring and setting up our screens. And that gives us the possibility to easily create these screens without a lot of headache of configuring them. So before we get started, let's go ahead and set up Expo Router in our project, and then I'm going to show you by an example. Let's go ahead and open the official documentation of Expo Router, and under manual installation, I'm going to start with installing Expo Router and its peer dependencies. I'm going to do that here. And while it's installing, I'm going to go to the next step. The next step is to change the entry point. So from package.json, we need to point the main, like the entry point of our project towards Expo Router. So I'm going to go into package.json. Under this main, which now points to index.tsx, I'm going to change it to point to Expo Router /entry. Meaning that now I can remove this index.tsx safely. This is already handled by Expo Router. Going back, we are going to have to add the schema of our project. That happens in app.json, and somewhere under the slug, I can add scheme. This scheme is used for the deep links, similar to how a website has the HTTPS scheme. Our application is going to be the AI chat clone scheme. So when we want to open a link in our application, we're going to send a link, something similar to AI chat clone, then the double dot slash slash, and then let's say chat1. For example, this might be a valid deep link for opening our application on the screen chat1. We're gonna cover that later, but the good thing is that Expo Router is taking care of that. Expo Router also makes it easy for us to run our projects on the web, to target web as well, by simply installing React Native Web and React DOM. So I'm going to do that as well, because it's a matter of installing these two libraries and changing the bundler to Metro, which we already did in this previous step. We don't have to modify babel.config, it's already like that, and we just have to restart our server. Let's go ahead, find our server, stop it, and then restart it, and as well with, npm start dash dash space dash dash clear to clear the cache. This is important. Let's reopen it in our simulator or in Expo Go if you're using it. And what we see is the welcome screen from Expo Router. If we see the screen, everything worked correctly, setting up Expo Router. And what we have to do now is we see the screen because in our source app folder, we do not have any files. And Expo Router, being a file-based navigation system, is looking specifically at this folder, the app folder with this name, and is checking if there is any screens there. So what we can do is move the app tsx here, or maybe I will just simply do index.tsx. I'm gonna create a new file. I'm gonna call it index.tsx, and index means homepage, or in this folder, this is the file, the main file that is going to be opened. And I'm going to simply export a component from here. Export default function home screen. And let's return a view with a text saying home. I'm going to make sure to import view and text from React Native, and I can add some class names as well here to do item center and justify center. And yeah, I will leave it like this. Now, if I reload my application, we should see home here. And I don't know why it's not in the center, but I think it's fine. Maybe it's flex? No, it's flex 1. Anyway, BG red. What am I doing wrong here? Why BG red is not there? Home 1, 2, 3. Okay, BG red is not working, giving me an impression that with what? The Tailwind classes are not applied here. If I do text-free Excel, yeah, it seems that it's not applied here. And where I'm going to look at is, yeah, I know. It's because in app.tsx, we are importing this global CSS file. We need to do the same here in the index. And I will do it import. And now it's going to be dash dash global CSS. And now it's working. And in order for us not to forget to import this global CSS, and if we forget, we see that the Tailwind classes are not applied, what we're going to do is we're going to create a new separate file in our app folder called _layout. This is a very important concept to understand, and I'm going to export it as default function root layout. And if I return here null, what we're going to see is that we lost everything. Let me explain quickly what this layout is. The layout is basically a wrapper around all the screens in a specific folder. This layout being in the app folder means that this is usually called the root layout, because this layout is being wrapped around any screen that we ever can be in our application. And in the root layout is usually where we can import things like the global CSS or do other stuff that we need in the whole application. And if I do it here, I no longer have to do it in other screens. But the problem is, why don't we see anything? Well, because we are returning null. The layout behaves as a component that wraps around the screens, and we are responsible in the layout to render the screen itself that has to be rendered. Similar to how we would render the children component, but in this case, we can render a slot imported from Expo router. And if I render it here, we get the behavior or what we had before. And this slot basically is referencing the index file or any screen that we are currently on, and we can even wrap things around this slot, like a global context provider or a theme provider, things like that. And the slot is very minimal, like basically we take the children, we render them. However, if we need some animations or if we need a header, we can do that by importing some specific navigators, such as a stack. So if I replace this with a stack, we're going to see the header at the top. If I replace this with tabs, we're going to see a bottom tabs at the bottom. And by simply creating different files in this subdirectory, they're going to appear as different tabs here. Perfect. For now, let's do it as a stack, but in a second, we're going to adjust it to something else. So with Expo router, this is the main part. We're going to create files, they're going to become screens, and with layout, we configure stuff for a group of screens in a folder. Let's see, home screen, navigation. Yeah, I also had to show you the navigation. href about. Maybe we're gonna cover this navigation a bit more in detail when we create like specific screens. And we cover the layout. We have a stack. Here, there is a very good explanation of how Expo router decides which screen to load by default. I encourage you to read it. Very good explanation. And cleanup. In the cleanup, we can remove index from the root folder because it's no longer used. And the app.tsx from here can also be removed because it's no longer going to be used. We're gonna work with an app folder. I think we're ready to move to the next step and to actually start building some UIs. And let's do a git add, git commit setup expo router. Perfect. All right, so we are done with the important but a little bit boring part. Now we're going to get into a little bit more exciting stuff, and the next step is going to be to build a custom side menu, something similar to what you saw on in ChatGPT. So I'm going to show you the home. If I go here, this is what I'm talking about. A custom drawer menu that is going to display a list of chats that we can move through. I'm going to get into that in a second. For now, I will take a very short break and then we continue. Crazy. Poți să prinzi conținut, te rog? Yep. All right, so where are we? Do we have any questions, Lucas? So it's like a parent. Yes, it's like a parent. It's like a wrapper. Like think about it, like it basically wraps around your screens. We're talking about layout now. If you're still watching and enjoying it so far, make sure to subscribe to the channel because most of you watching right now are not subscribed and it would help us a lot. We put a lot of effort in preparing these tutorials for you and would love to do that for a longer period. Okay, so let's go ahead and talk about, not only talk, but implement our custom side menu. The first step is to install this custom drawer navigator. We're gonna go into the docs of Expo router, and because this has a separate navigator and not super common, I mean it's common in a lot of application, but it doesn't come by default with Expo router. We need to install it separately and then use it in Expo router. And that's the beauty of Expo router being built on top of React navigation, is that we can use any kind of feature and navigator provided by React navigation in Expo router. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to copy this installation guide, installation command. I'm going to go back in our terminal and let's install the navigation drawer. Now you can use drawer, and in the root layout, we just need to make sure that we use the gesture handler root view. So in our application layout, again, the layout file, that is the place where we configure global stuff. We're going to import the gesture handler root view from React Native Gesture Handler. And we're going to wrap it around everything, around our stack. So this is the process of wrapping things around. That's why we need to render here the stack, and everything on top, like the parent, is going to be the parent of our screens. And I think, yeah, we need the style. Flex 1, you can do that with, I will do it with style. I'm not going to do it with class name. Not to bother, it's just a simple style. It's totally fine to also mix and match NativeWind with style objects. In some cases, I do that. But yeah, let's not get confused there. Okie dokie. So the gesture handler is needed for the swiping animation, to swipe and open it. Now we need to get the drawer from Expo router / drawer and render it there. Let's take it step by step. So instead of this stack, we're going to import Expo router / drawer. We're going to import the drawer navigator, and we're going to replace here to a drawer. If I do that, we see a reanimated mismatch version. Okay, let's see. I'm sorry?
Try to run npx like x6 command of expo. Let me try expo install and yeah, npx expo install --fix.
Okay, so what we see is a mismatch version of reanimated between the reanimated that we have installed here, 3.17, and the reanimated expected from the Expo, 53.0.10. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to run npx expo install and then --fix, and that is going to change some of the version to match the version of Expo SDK. I see that it changed the React navigation drawer.
Okay, I think it's.
And yeah, as we can, maybe not. Let's, I'm going to have to open it. So is it the AI chat clone here? Cannot read property drawer of undefined. Let me try to restart my server with npm start -- clear, reload, or reload like this, expo router / drawer. Yep, now everything is working, and we see at the top the hamburger menu. If I press on it, we're gonna see the index file. The index is the screen that we have here. If we're going to add like more screens here, for example, test.tsx, and here simple export default component function test screen. I don't know why AI is not kicking in, but even if I'm going to return null, we're gonna see in the drawer a new screen here, test, which I'm going to be able to swipe. I can open the drawer also with a gesture like this, as a normal drawer works, and everything works as simple as that. However, we're going to configure some stuff to adjust the look, the behavior, and especially the way we are rendering and what we are rendering here. And what we're going to do is we're going to provide some screen options here. Screen options are ways that we can configure the options of all the screens in this group in this navigator, in this drawer. And what I see here is that we do not need a title. So header title is going to be an empty string. Now we got rid of the header title here. For the header style, we're going to set a background color, not white, but actually black. Perfect. For the drawer, inactive tint color is going to be white, and that is most probably somewhere here. And for the drawer style itself, we can say the border right color gray. Do you write gray with A or with E? And a border width of 1, and that is going to be this border here. So if I do it, maybe I'm going to go into the index to remove a background color red from here, like that's too much. And you're going to see the border here, if I understand it correctly. If I do it 10, we're going to see it, and if it's red, you're going to actually see it. So a 1, or even better, like you can do it even smaller using the property style sheet dot hairline width, and this style sheet should be imported from React Native dot hairline width, and instead of red, we're gonna go back to gray. When we make like the screen and everything dark, like this gray is going to differentiate or separate everything. Perfect. Now what we can do is we can also we would like to change the name index that is displayed here to something better, like index is the name of our file and is being picked up by default, but we can also adjust that. To adjust properties of a specific screen, what we should do is we should expand this drawer component, because now it's a self-closing tag, but by expanding I mean we remove it as a self-closing tag and we actually close it here, because inside I want to render drawer.screen components. And this drawer.screen is how we will target some of the screens and adjust their properties. We target them by specifying name, and the name is going to be specifically the file name. So for example, index. So the name index is going to target this screen, and we can say, hey, the options of this screen is going to be, we need the label of the drawer. So drawer label. Is it drawer label? Options. I missed options. Drawer label, we can do, I don't know, ChatGPT. So now here we're going to see ChatGPT. Perfect. We can also add an icon there by doing drawer icon and providing here a component that renders an icon. And the icon, we're going to take it from Expo vector icons. Go ahead, where is it? This one. Go ahead, find an icon that looks like an AI. I'm going to use the font awesome 5. So let's go ahead and import font awesome 5 and render it for the drawer icons as font awesome 5 with the name atom, the size 18, and the color white. So now if I reload and open it up, I'm going to see that atom there. When I'm going to make it the background black, it's going to pop. So I'm going to move it back to white like this. Perfect. So far so good. Do I... Okay. Okay. The thing is that our drawer is going to be a little bit specific, because what we want to render here is not a do I need to change some colors here? The theme.
The theme on the bottom.
Should I change the theme first?
Maybe, yeah.
Yeah, let's go ahead and try to change the theme, because right now, like with the white theme, like we are missing some stuff, like we do not see it properly. So in our guide, if we scroll down until the custom theme, we're gonna see that in the root layout, we can adjust the theme. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to copy this part, go into the root layout, and at the top, let's create this theme. The dark theme that we are overriding can be imported from as dark theme from React Navigation Native. And what we're doing is we are keeping everything from that theme, but we are overriding the primary color and we're setting like, yeah, basically the dark colors. Now having this theme, what we have to do is simply wrap around our drawer a theme provider. Make sure to close it after closing the drawer. And this theme provider is also imported from React Navigation Native. And because we are using the dark theme, we see that everything here is dark. The background and even the drawer has like a nice color here. Now everything looks way better. In this case, we are hard coding the dark theme, but you can also choose, because you can take the dark theme and the light theme and by using a hook, you can take the theme of a user device and provide a different one yourself. But I'm not going to do that. I'm going to keep working with a dark theme like this. Dark theme all the way. All right, now going back to where we were at. Setting up the drawer. We have this. And the next step is going to be a custom drawer. So yeah, as I was saying, the by default drawer looks fine, but what it does, it simply renders the screens from here in our component, in our side menu. In a lot of cases, you might want to have like a custom header for displaying the profile, or some buttons like logout or displaying the version, or some other custom menu items that are not inside your folder. You might want to add them here. So in order to do that, we need to create our own custom drawer. We're going to do that in our components, and we're going to call it, how do we call it? Custom drawer, history chats drawer. So let's call it history chats drawer.tsx. In here, we're going to export default history chats drawer, and what we can do, we're going to import. I want to step by step include you in here, like not to show you like the final code. So let me import from React Navigation drawer. I think we can import simply the drawer content and render it here. And if I'm not mistaken, this is going to be the everything. But we need properties. We need the props, which we can type it with drawer content component props imported from here. And we're going to take all of these props and send them down to this component. What we did here is basically nothing. We prepared our ground because we are rendering the same default drawer content. Let's just see how we can attach this one to our layout in the drawer itself. To do that, first we need to import our newly created component. We import history chats drawer from our components, and we say that, hey, the drawer content is going to be this history chats drawer. And if I go to the history chats drawer and say, hey, I want to render it inside a view, just like showing you what's possible. And that view is going to be imported from React Native. And I want that view to have a padding of 4 and a background color of red 50 or 500. You're going to see that this drawer content, even though it remains the same, we have like flexibility here. We can add here a text with this is a title. So you have a lot of flexibility in what you want, what else you want to render here. Margin top 10. Yeah, something like that, or padding top. So yeah, as you can see, we have flexibility now what we want to render around the drawer content. I'm not going to do that. I just wanted to show you what's possible. But we have a lot more flexibility. Like we can even adjust every single individual item. So for that reason, I'm going to remove everything and we're going to start building it from scratch. First, we're going to need the drawer content scroll view. Where is it? Drawer content scroll view. And this is just the scroll view for our drawer content. Then we have a drawer item list. So drawer item list. Also sending all the props. Now, if I reload, what we're going to see is the same item lists like that. Okay. Now, we want below the default screens, we want to render some drawer items for our chat history. For all the chats that we started in the past, we want to render one item here. We're going to use the same drawer item, and we're going to give it, for example, let me import it first. And by giving it a label, for example, chat1, and on press, that will not do anything, we're going to see that we should see another list here, chat1. We can also give it in active tint color white, and it's going to look like the others with white. If I press on it, nothing happens because we have here on press event. And we can also adjust the is active or focused, actually. If I say focused equal true, this drawer item is going to have the background highlighted. So just like that, we see that we can draw anything here, any item that we want, and it's going to be helpful to draw the history of chats. Let's go ahead and do that. Or before that, maybe I'm going to set up the details screen and then we're going to render the list. Or no, let's render the list because we are talking about drawer item, so we can render one of them. Let's go ahead and import from our dummy data in the assets data chat history all of this array with all of this chat history. They have a title, and what we want to see is a list of all of these chat screens here. For that, let's go ahead and import the chat history from, I think we can do add assets because we have the path aliases there. And this chat history, again, it's an array of objects representing a chat room, right? When you start a conversation, or let's call it a thread. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to loop through this chat history, and for every item there, I'm going to render a drawer item. Let's take it step by step. I'm going to open the curly brackets to get access to the chat history variable. I'm going to do mapping over it from an object, for example, from an item object. I will render a drawer item component like this. So if I reload, we should already see a lot of chat1, chat1, chat1. If I change the label to a dynamic item.title and then press RR to reload, then we're going to see a bunch of the titles of all of these chat histories. For the focus, I'm going to set it false for a second. And what I'm going to also do is I'm going to make sure to give a key to this component by saying item.id. A key is important every time we're mapping, every time we're in a list of things, because that's how React will improve the performance, keeping track of and memorizing all the components. Now, if I reload, everything should be okay. Yeah, if I go here, perfect. Perfect, perfect, perfect. Now, what happens if we press on one of these items? Well, this would be chat rooms. Every chat history has an ID. So what we need to do first is we need to create a screen in our application that will render a chat room knowing its ID. Let's create it as a folder, and I'm going to explain you in a second why. Or maybe I'm going to create it. Yeah, let's create it as a folder and let's call it chat. Inside the chat, I'm going to create the screen, but the screen will contain the following syntax. It's going to be square brackets ID closing square brackets .tsx. Why do I have this syntax? That's because I want the URL, the path of that screen, to include a unique identifier for the chat room, and based on that identifier, we're going to be able to display the correct messages when we navigate to a specific chat room screen or URL. Here, I'm going to make sure to export default function chat screen, and we can return a view with a text chat screen. Let's make sure to import view and text. And another thing I'm going to do right away is I'm going to get access to this dynamic parameter ID that we see here, and we can get access using a hook called use local search params imported from Expo router. I think I have a typo here. It should be use local search params. So in the local search params, we're going to have this ID property. And what we can do is we can render it here on the screen as chat ID to see if it indeed works. I think maybe the class name here should be text white. Let's see. Now, if I open it here, we're gonna see the third screen here, the chat/ID. First of all, let's delete test. Test is already confusing us and we do not need it. But we have an index, which is ChatGPT. The purpose of that screen is going to be starting a new thread, a new conversation, or the home screen of our application. But chat/ID is going to render a specific chat room. The thing is that we have it here, but we do not want it to appear in the list. We're going to hide it in a second, but before that, I'm going to go back into the layout. No, back into the custom drawer from our components. And when we press on one of these items from here, I want to redirect to the chat/ID screen. To do that, I need to import router from Expo router. Import router from Expo router. And on press, when we press on one of these items, I'm going to simply say router.push and push to the /chat because that's the name of a folder, and then go /ID because that is the dynamic path parameter, the name of a file, the screen. So if I do one here, hard-coded, and I press on any of these items, let's reload. And if I press on any of these items, we're going to see chat screen 1. The idea here is not to use hard-coded ID, but dynamic item.id property. And this way, by pressing on this chat screen, we see, I need to reload. By pressing on this chat screen, we see chat screen 6. By pressing on this one, we see chat screen 9. By pressing on this one, chat screen 2. Perfect. Now, we also should think about how do we display the correct item which is currently focused. Because we are on chat screen 2, but if we open it here, it shows us the general screen. But we would like to show a specific item as highlighted. For that, we need to compare where is this item targeting to, or where is it pointing to, and we need to check the current URL. To do that, we can take using use path name, and that is going to be path name. And the path name, if I console log path name, you're going to see that if I go here, I will reload. If I go to meal plan, I see that the path name is chat/free. So I can go right away here in focused and say if this path name is equal to this path, then it should be shown as focused. Now we're on chat with ID 3. If I look here, I need to reload. If I go this one, chat with ID 2, it highlights correctly. If I go to UI feedback suggestion, it highlights correctly. If I go here, it highlights correctly. Perfect. Now the last step in our system is to hide the generic chat/ID screen, because that one is just there for the purpose of rendering a specific chat screen. So for that, we're going to go into the layout. Passing the custom drawer. Not sure if we have it in the guide, Lucas. Do we? But in the yeah, we need to set some options to that specific screen. So I'm going to do that with drawer.screen, similar to how we set options for the index. I'm going to target, but this time we're going to target the chat slash, it should be chat because it's a folder slash, and the file name is ID, exactly how you see it in the system here in the file and folder names. And with options, we can say hide drawer item style, display none, and that should have hidden the generic chat/ID, and we only can get there by clicking on a specific chat history. Perfect. So that's the custom drawer in action, and that's how you can do that. I'm going to commit it. Git add, git commit. I hope I didn't skip anything. Is everything all right? Lucas, everything good?
Yeah, you didn't skip anything. Good.
Okay, perfect.
This detailed chat screen was actually the next lesson, so
Okay.
we can go right away to chat input.
Okay. Any questions so far, guys?
There is one, whether you'll host this.
Will you host this application? We're going to show you how we can host the web version of it. Because building takes a little bit of time, I can explain you how to do that. But the backend, we're going to host it and prepare it for production. And also like the web part, we can also do that. It's not very hard. That's going to be tomorrow, so make sure to join the live stream the second day of the challenge tomorrow as well. Okay, let's go ahead and continue. And I'm going to open our guide, and the next step is the detailed chat screen. The detailed chat screen we already created, and it's the app chat ID with a dynamic path parameter. Here is a little bit more explanation, and it's very similar to how a URL on the web looks like. So if you go to website /chat/123, this 123 basically is an identifier that is being used by the system to display specific content, a dynamic content. So we get access to it using the local search parameters, and based on that ID we can find the specific chat screen, right? To do that, we can import the chat history. So in our application chat ID, we have ID, but we need to know the specific chat title and so on. So let's import chat history from our assets data chat history, and then with a simple JavaScript find, we can do chat history.find the chat, the chat that has the ID equal to the ID that we've got from the local search parameters. And whenever you are searching something, there is a case where it was not found. So I can say if chat was not found, maybe you can return a view with a text saying chat not found, or chat with chat this ID not found. Otherwise, we can render already the chat title, for example. So now if I reload and go to movie script, I'm gonna see chat screen movie script. We already have information about this chat, this specific one, coming from our dummy data. And there we're going to also have a history of messages with IDs, with roles, and so on. Perfect. You can apply like some styles as well. In the next lesson, we will change this to use real data. But before we go into the real data, we're going to cover the chat input. Before I do that, let me quickly do a git add chat screen. Okay. Today, how much we will cover? Today the goal is to cover all the functionality for the chat interface and the chat functionality. So by the end of today's video, you should have a working AI chat application with messages, like with text messages. Tomorrow, we're going to get into a little bit more advanced stuff with maybe images, audio, deploying everything like structured outputs and so on. But today we should have the front end, the back end, the connection with OpenAI, and everything. At least that is the plan. For that to happen, let's go ahead and continue. And the next step is going to be to work on our chat input, because the main part of a chat application is the text input. And we're going to build it as a separate component called chat input tsx. Let's go ahead and in our components, let's create it as chat input.tsx. Let's export default function chat input return. We're going to return something. We're going to start with a view, so let's import view, a view, and inside the view we're going to have at some point a text input with maybe a placeholder to see it, ask anything. Let's go ahead in our application index, Because the index, the ChatGPT, is going to be the screen that is going to start a conversation. And in this index, let's go ahead and where are we? Let's render the chat input here by importing it from our components. Okie dokie. The chat input, this view, let's give it some background. For example, a background. You can do like a custom color from here. I'm going to change it in a second. Yeah, let me give it what? Text input class name. What's messing up with the way I want to style it is the parent component that has this justify center. Or the item center, yeah. Now, if I remove the item center, everything is going to be full screen here. And later, the containers, like the main part of this screen, is going to have a class name flex 1, taking all the available space, and that is going to automatically push our chat input to the bottom of the screen. So I added it here just for our chat input to be at the bottom, and now we can go back to the chat input and start working with it. The one main problem that we see is that the input is barely visible, is behind the notch. That's called the unsafe area, the being displayed under a notch, and we should be aware, especially when we're working with inputs and with buttons, that users should be able to see and interact with. We can work with that and adjust the spacings by using hook called use safe area insets imported from React Native safe area context. By using this hook here in our component, we are going to get access to the insets, and the insets is basically the amount of spacings at the top, at the bottom, left, right, that we should be aware and we should not render things there. For example, if I'm going to give here a style and say that add some padding on the bottom with the amount of insets bottom that we have. In that case, it's going to add some spacings and our text input is going to be visible inside the safe area. Okay, perfect. I don't like this slate color. We have found exactly the color that we're looking for. And with colors, you can also adjust and give custom colors with hex codes in this format. And I'm looking for 262626, something like that. Perfect. And the whole container is going to be rounded at the top to XL. And this is going to add some rounded corners that we're going to see a little bit better when we're going to make it a bit larger. Now, for the text input, let's go ahead in the class name. Let's work a bit with styles. For example, padding top around 6, padding bottom around 2. And on the x-axis, like on the left and the right, we're going to have around 4. Something like that. And we have it here. The text, we do not see it, but if I give here text white, it's going to be visible. We can also adjust the placeholder color, which is okay, but we can adjust it with placeholder text color gray. And we can also say that it can be multi-line, because if I have a very large prompt, I would like the text to the component to grow and to show in multiple lines. Perfect. Then below the text input, we have some icons. What I'm trying to achieve is the following component. A text input, and below we're gonna have some buttons. And these buttons with voice, if I start typing, should transform to a send button. That's gonna be fun. Let's go back to our application. And let's add below the text input another view that is going to be the line of buttons. Firstly, I'm going to have an icon. We're going to use material community icons that we can import from Expo Vector Icons. I'm going to use the plus from there. Plus size 24, color white. So the plus is there. And then there is I'm going to use another icon here for the voice. The color is black, but what I'm looking to achieve I forgot which one. This one. Yeah, this is like a button. So I'm going to have to put it inside a view with background white and the text voice. Okay, I see. Not this one. This one. So I'm going to first on the parent component, I'm going to say class name flex row. And justify between maybe. Yep. And the px4 to have the same spacings. And for the voice, I'm going to wrap it in another view. And this view is going to have, first of all, a class name bg white. It's going to have some padding. Padding 2 is going to have some rounded, so rounded full, and after the icon it's going to have a text that will say voice. Now this text should be imported from React Native. The icon and the text should be on the same line, so I'm gonna do flex row. I'm going to add it a gap of 2 probably, or maybe gap 1 is going to be enough. And the text itself can be black and a bit smaller, text SM. Perfect. That looks good. All right, so we've done the UI. Now let's go ahead and add state, because when we are gonna write a message here, we would like to have access to that text whenever the user will press the button send. To do that, we need a state, and the state is going to be our message and set message for the setter. And we're gonna create it using the hook use state from React Native, and we're gonna initialize it with an empty string. The use state should be imported from React. And now this message and set message should be binded to the text input. We do that with 2 properties. We set the value of a text message to always reflect or show the value of our state, and we are listening for onChange text callback, and whenever that happens, we are updating our state. This way, we have our state as the single source of truth. So if I reload, and type something, the message is going to have this value. Value on change text. The next step is going to be the keyboard avoiding view. This is a very common problem that in development a lot of people skip, but whenever you go to production, when you start typing, the keyboard is going to be visible, and the keyboard is enabled using toggle, Command K. So if I show the keyboard, we see that we lost the whole component, the button. We do not see what we are typing. And this is a very common thing, and we need to be aware of. To solve this, we're going to use the keyboard avoiding view from React Native. So let's go ahead and from React Native, import keyboard avoiding view. I'm going to wrap it around my whole view here, and I'm going to close it at the end. And the behavior should be adjusted depending on the platform. On iOS and Android, it works a bit differently. So for that reason, we also need platform from React Native, and the keyboard avoiding view will get the behavior if platform OS equals to iOS, then we're gonna use padding. Otherwise, we're going to have undefined or the default value. Just like that, if now I'm going to open it up here, it's going to go to the top. But it's not going enough, and we can adjust that by having here offset, something keyboard vertical offset. And this is also like if we're on iOS, the vertical offset can be 100. And now it's better. Maybe 100 is too much. 80. Yeah, something like that. And this keyboard vertical offset should be equal to the amount of space from the top of the screen to the top of the component, to the top of the physical screen, to the top of a component. And there is around like 80 pixels taken by the header. That's why it needs like additional stuff. Okay, perfect. What's next? The next step is displaying icons. According to our design, we'll only show the send icon when there is text in the input. If there is empty, we'll show the voice button instead. We can achieve that with a simple conditional rendering. So here we can render the send button as the material community icons. And I'm going to do that just before this one here. So like this. Now we're rendering both the send button and the voice, but we want to render them conditionally, either one or the other. I'm gonna do that with a conditional rendering, checking if message is there, question mark, I want to render the send button. Then double dots comes the default value, which is this view. So copy the view, put it here. So now there is message, there is the send button. If I delete the message, we go back to the voice. Message, delete. Perfect. Size 29. There is a very small jump, maybe size 28. I don't know, or 30. Yeah, something like that. Perfect. So now we have conditional buttons depending on the state. Now to make this component reusable, we will use some properties like a callback function on send, which we're going to do it in this way to be able to adjust what happens when the chat input is trying to send a message, because in different contexts, in different screens, we're going to have a different function to be called when we want to send the message. And also we're going to pass here the is loading. So to do that, I'm going to receive these properties in the chat input component as on send and is loading like this. The on send will be used when we press the icon arrow up. So here in the icon we can do on press. We're going to call I think on send with a message, right, Lucas?
Yeah, for now only a message.
Yeah. And with a loading, we are going to disable this icon. Can we do that? Disabled. If we are loading, this will prevent us from clicking multiple times.
Actually, if you want, you can implement handle send function right away. It's also in the example.
Should I reload? Oh.
It's gonna be a boilerplate.
Okay, so actually it would be better to add the handle, like instead of calling this on send here, let's call a handle send function, because it will do a couple of other stuff later. So let's create it, handle send. And what it's going to do, first is going to reset the message. Then it's going to try to call the onSend callback function. Look, as I can hear myself. And then with catch error, we can console log it like this. Okay, now whenever we are rendering the chat input, and that would be in the application index, we need here to send something. For example, const handle send. We're gonna receive a message, console log sending message. Come on, message. I messed it up like this. Now I will take this handle send, I will send it to the chat input as on send, and is loading. I'm going to say is loading false for now. What I'm going to do is that, yes, we have it here. So if I write something and press, in the logs, we should say sending this. Hello, sending hello. I will render the same chat input when we go to a details screen here. So on the details screen, when we are on a thread, we also want to have a chat input to continue that conversation. So in that chat, in application chat ID, I'm also going to render the same chat input. Let's make sure to import it from our components. We're going to also have here a handle send message. And now if I go off one of these items, we see this one, but if I add flex1 to this text, something like that, is going to be pushed to the bottom. And it also has it like that. Perfect. Now we have it both in the details page of a chat and in the home screen where we want to start a new chat. And with that being said, we are finished with the chat input. Let's go ahead and commit our changes. Chat input. And I think we We covered everything in the chat input, right?
Yes.
Perfect. Now, we're going to work on something on the next step. The next step is, yes, we have a chat input, but in our data, we also have some messages. In this step, we're going to work on rendering these messages in a list above the chat input. Let's go ahead and open the next lesson in our guide, displaying chat messages. And what we're going to do is we're going to first use flat lists. So what we're going to do is we're going to work with the screen that renders the details of a specific chat room. So in the application chat ID, that's where we're going to have a list of messages. So instead of this view, I'm going to render a flat list. A flat list is a component imported from React Native that allows us to render a list of data, scrollable list of data that can also support like loading more, refetching, and so on. A flat list has two required properties. It's the data, which should be an array, and it's the render item, which is going to receive the one specific item from that array, and we should decide how we want to render it. For the array, we have access to the chat history. So in the data, one of these chats, we're going to have access to it. And one of the chats has an array of messages. So that's what we want to render in our flat list, the chat.messages. Now, when we render one of these message, this is going to be the item. We want to render the message itself as a text on the screen. So instead of in the render item, we're going to get one message and we're going to render it as a text by saying item.message. If I do that, nothing is going to be visible because the text is dark, but if I do class name text white, we're going to see the list of messages there. And if I go to another one like a meal plan, we're gonna see, can you suggest me a meal plan? Perfect. Now, with a little bit of styling, we're gonna make this one look very nice. So what do we do? Let's go ahead and instead of building the component here, I like to create reusable components. A component that is going to be responsible for rendering one message in a list. So in the components, we're going to call it message list item.tsx. I'm going to export default function message list item, and it's going to return currently the same text as we've done there, text with here message. The text should be imported from React Native. And if I go into back in our detail screen, instead of rendering the text here, I'm going to render our newly created message list item component. Make sure to import it here at the top, message list item from our components. And yeah, in the message list item, if I do class name text white, and I go to one detail screen, I see message, message, message. That's because that's what we're rendering hard-coded here. What we want is we want to send this item as a property called message to our custom component. Let's call it message item. In the message list item, we can receive this property and we can render and use it like this, message item.message. And we have everything back here, but it's a custom component and we can focus our attention just to rendering one message in this list. We are going to put it into a view because we're going to add some styles there. This view, we're going to import it from React Native. And let's style it a little bit. Let's to this text. To this text. px4 py1. I'm going to go to one of these details page, which is padding x and padding y. We are going to also, it really depends on if it's our message or it's a message response from AI. What I'm trying to say is, if I go home to show you the example, if I go here, for example, in hello, the messages that I send, they're going to be aligned to the right, and we're going to have a background color, and the message response are going to be aligned to the left. So that's what I'm trying to achieve here as well. Let's go here. And the message item in the chat history is going to have a property role. And the role, if it's user, it means that it's a message sent by us. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to say, hey, is user is going to be equal to if message role, or maybe we can even take the message and the role out of the message item. So if role is equal to user, then we are going to store true in this value is user. Based on that, we can tell like where we want to align this item. We're going to use a class name flex row. We're going to say margin bottom 3, px2, and we're going to add a dynamic property here. But to add the dynamic property, we have to put this one in a template string inside the curly brackets. And now we can check if it's user, then we want to apply the justify and property to put everything to the right of the screen. Otherwise, it's going to be justify start. So if I go here, meal plan, we see that some messages are to the right, some messages are to the left. Perfect. Then we're gonna have another view for the background, right? So I'm going to put the text in another view, and this is going to have a class name. I want this class name is also going to depend on the user. First, it's going to be what? Well, if is user, it's going to have a background color, a custom 262626. 262626. Otherwise, nothing. So I'm going to, instead of question mark, do and. Okay, it has something. Outside, I'm going to put rounded XL. Come on. And px4 py1. And also, if the message is too long, I don't want my message to take full width, like in the case of the first item here. So for that reason, if it's my message, I want the maximum width to be around 70%. So if I do that, yes, it's going to be around 70% here. Okay. Let me double check my styling.
I think it's good.
Yeah? Feels like a bit too much style, so maybe I added.
No, something is not correct.
Maybe it's the parent, but no, it's not the parent. The text does not need these ones.
Oh. Yeah, exactly.
But what's going on here? You know what I mean?
I still don't see it, like my life.
Oh, okay. Okay. Give me 1 second. Alex? No, she's not home. Let me double check.
Still not good. I don't understand why.
We're gonna get there.
For me, it's rounded to XL. On the second view, you have only rounded XL.
Rounded to XL. Okay, that's one thing, but it's about the spacing inside. PX.
It's exactly the same.
What are we missing? Some padding, right? P4. Okay, P4 works. PX4, PY2, PY3, PY4. Maybe just do P4 and that's it.
You know what? For me, it looks so much different.
Yeah.
Let me try one thing.
But yeah, I think that's good. Let's go ahead and continue. And what do we have? Our message is rendered nice for both our messages and the AI response messages. We are going to format Markdown. Markdown is a very common format used by AI when answering stuff, especially when including things like code snippets and so on. By default, if we're gonna have some Markdown, I'm not sure if we have in the chat history some Markdown code, but I can show you. For example, if I add here another chat room, where is it? Called ID 11 Markdown, and if I say I'm just gonna have one message from the maybe assistant that will have Markdown something. I need some more examples of Markdown, so I'm gonna use AI to generate some Markdown here for us to just see. Add some Markdown to this specific message. Use some code snippets as well. Is it okay if I do that? hope it didn't go crazy here. I just needed one Markdown message. AI, what are you doing?
I think it's gonna be hard to
It's gonna break, right?
Have some simple markdown. Later you'll have a
Yeah. So let's yeah, it's going to break some stuff. So I'm going to add here some very simple Markdown. This is bold text. This is italic. This is a link. This is a code block. Yeah, I think that's enough. So if now I'm going to open this Markdown chat history, which should be the last one, we're going to see that it simply renders as text. But with a simple library like React Native Markdown display, we can parse this Markdown format and render it properly styled. So let's go ahead and install it by running npx expo install React Native Markdown display. Before that, I think I'm going to do a git add message component. And only then I'm going to set up the React Native Markdown display. Now, using the React Native Markdown, we need to import it inside our message list item. So in message list item, I'm going to import it here, and we have to replace the text with a Markdown component. Think that's what should happen. So instead of this text, even with a class name, I'm going to replace it with a Markdown. And if I reload and go to some messages, the style is not there yet, but we're going to get there. We see some code here. Let's follow with the styles. And in the guide, you're going to see an object with pre-built styles that we prepared for you that you can copy. And this is how you can adjust different style properties of the Markdown display. I think I'm going to put it even outside because it doesn't depend on the state of a component. I'm going to take this Markdown style and I'm going to send it to the Markdown component like this. And just like that, the messages are working back as they are working before. I think that's why we needed here py1. So yeah, now it makes sense why we had the py1. The messages are working and displayed correctly, but the Markdown also has some styling. Maybe the code doesn't have a correct the bold text shows correctly, italic text shows correctly, the link works correctly, it's even working, like it opens stuff. This is a code block. Oh, but I don't know what's this, where is this coming from? Because that's a JavaScript code snippet.
Maybe it was generated differently than OpenAI does.
Maybe. So yeah, with code snippets, we're gonna check a bit later. Oh, here it is. Yeah, it needed some new lines probably. And now it displays even code snippets correctly. Nice. That's the Markdown support. Even I think I can take the whole screen here, put it there.
You can make code snippets even better by using highlight library, but we'll
Yeah.
this for now.
If you want to, if your use case works a lot with code snippets, you can improve this display by even using a highlighting library, and you could highlight the text with different colors automatically like you would see in your editor. But because in our case, we just need simple styling for code, like we're going to be good with that. Okay, go ahead and experiment, check the official documentation and see what other styles you can adjust, but for us, everything now is good. The next step is what? The new message in chat, in view, right?
Yeah, the animation to scroll.
Mm-hmm. Do we do that now? Or do we do that a bit later?
It depends. You could do that by adding more, like copy pasting those messages.
Yeah, I'm thinking that it's just, we're not gonna add right now to the history. We're gonna add that a bit later.
Yeah, you could do it then.
Yeah, we're gonna come back to this animation a bit later, because it's going to introduce this problem when we add new messages. And the next step for us is going to be first TypeScript and then Zustand store for our global state. Before I do that, let me go ahead and do git add, git commit, Markdown, and we are continuing. I'm gonna bring some water and we follow with the next step. Give me just 1 second. All right, so I'm back. Do we have any questions so far? Yeah, I think you can integrate with other API providers like Gemini or Anthropic, like the Claude, and other models, because you're gonna see that the layer of integrating with a model is very thin, like it's a 2 or 3 lines of code, and you can replace that very easily. Like what's most importantly is the whole architecture of our application, but you can easily change like the model that you are integrating with. What's the backend? The backend is going to be Expo router API routes, because the backend you're going to see it's going to be very thin. Like it's going to be, I look at it, it's 20 lines of code. That's the whole backend that we are going to need for the application at this moment. Tomorrow we're going to add more features, so the backend is going to grow a bit, but anyway, like it's a thin backend. After finishing testing the application on Expo Go, how do I make an APK and send it to other people to test it on their phone? For that, you need to build your application. There are 2 ways. You can do that locally if you need Android or APK for Android. In that case, you're going to need Android Studio. Or alternatively, you can also build in the cloud using EAS services. So Expo EAS will build your application in the cloud, and in that case, you do not even need Android Studio. You're going to say, hey, build me this application. Expo EAS is going to do that and is going to give you the APK. So you can check out their documentation as well. All right, so we continue. TypeScript. TypeScript is very helpful for for us because it's going to help us prevent issues or catch issues early on. We already used here and there some types. In this lesson, we're going to make sure to add some custom types and use it in our application to make sure that all the data that we are passing around components is properly typed, and that way it's going to be safe and easy for us to develop and use later. So for example, in the chat input component and the message list item, if I look in the message list item, we see this error that message item has a type any. Basically, we didn't specify what should the message item look like. What we're going to do to fix that, we're going to create a type and specify that this is what we expect here. First, in the chat input, we're going to define the interface. You can do that with an interface. You can do that with that's for the input. Let's go ahead inside the components, chat input. And we're going to define an interface that is going to explain how do we want the props object to look like. We have an onSend, and the onSend is going to be a function that will receive the message, and it's going to be an asynchronous function. IsLoading is a Boolean type, and with a question mark, we say that it's also optional. Some components it's okay not to send it at all. Now, having this interface, we can say that these properties is of the type chat input props. Now, if I hover over the onSend, it shows me what type it is. If I hover over IsLoading, it shows me what type it is. And whenever we use it, for example, in application index, we see already that onSend and the handle send is not correctly typed, because the handle send should be an async function. Now it's properly typed, and the message should be a string here. So if for isLoading we're gonna send 1, 2, 3, it's going to tell us like, hey, probably you did something wrong, because the isLoading can either be undefined or it should be a Boolean. So in this case, in the index, I think we can even skip it. I'm gonna check that in the chat ID as well, where onSend needs to be async and the message should be a string. And now everything is good here. Perfect. That's for the chat input. And we need to do the same for the message list item. For the message list item, we're going to have to create some reusable types or interfaces that will define how a message or a chat looks like. For that, I'm going to go into the source and I'm going to create a new folder called types. And inside that, or maybe it's just a file called types, right?
It's a folder and a file.
Oh, okay. It's a folder, and there we're going to do types.ts. You can structure, like if you have different kind of types, like you can put all of them here. And I'm going to define these two interfaces, the message and the chat. All right, so the message has an ID, it has a role of either user or assistant, it has the message itself, and later we're gonna need the response ID, and I'm going to explain it a bit later. The chat, which is a chat history or a thread, has ID, it has title, and it has a list of messages. Now having these two main types, we can go ahead, for example, in the message list item, and in the message list item, we can import the message type. We can scroll down and we can define here, we can say that, hey, the message list item props has the message item of type message. Now we take these props and we type them correctly. So yeah, now is role is either user or assistant. So if I check it something like that, it's going to say, hey, it's not possible that the role has this value. So properly typed. And here the message, I can render it directly because I take it from there. Perfect. That's our message type. Amazing. We can go back and I'm thinking these markdown styles to extract it from here because it's taking a lot of space. So you can create a folder here, utils, that's super optional, but it's going to help you. And we can have here markdown.ts. And from message list item, I'm gonna copy these markdown styles. And I'm gonna move it to the markdown utils with also export const markdown styles. Now back in the message list item, I can do import markdown styles from utils markdown. And now everything is working as it was working before, but the styles are separate, so it's not getting in our way when we work with a message list item here. Perfect. So that was the types. I'm gonna do git add, git commit types, and we can move on to the next step. Let's go ahead and the next step. Oh, this is the fun part. The next one is the global state. So why do we need a global state here? Well, we're gonna have a lot of state for messages, for chats that we create, and we need access to them like from different parts of the application, from the drawer, from the screen, from the index, and so on. For that reason, we need a global state management where we're gonna store all of this data. We could use a React context for that and share that context around our application. That would solve part of a problem, and we're gonna have access to the same state from different parts of application. But in a chat application where this state changes very often, we receive new messages like very often. In that case, a context API might have performance issues down the road. So in this case, we're going to explore and integrate Zustand, which is a very lightweight global state management library, which is super powerful and very easy to work with. You can read more about why we're using it and the comparison between Zustand and useState and useContext, but I'm going to slowly explain you all of that by using it. So let's go ahead and open the introduction of Zustand, and let's start by installing the library in our project. So what I'm going to do is npm install Zustand. The next step is going to be to create our first store. Besides Zustand, we also need the React Native Async storage. That's going to be used later for persistence. So let's, while we're still here at the installation, let's go ahead, copy, and come on, why are you copying like this? Copy. And let's install React Native Async storage as well. To set up the Zustand store, we're going to create a folder store with a chat store file. In the source, let's create the store folder, and let's do chat store.ts. A store is basically a centralized collection of state and logic that manages that data in the application. So it's state and actions or ways we can update that state. To create a store, we are going to, we're gonna do it like step by step. First, we're going to need the create from Zustand. Then we're going to create the use chat store using the create method. The create method will get here the set and will contain an object with our state. For example, one of the states that we're gonna have might be, like let's do number 1. This is our store. To use it, we can go ahead and import the use chat store. For that reason, we need to do export here. And we're going to import it in our application chat ID. That's where we're going to need the list of chats, right? So here, let's go ahead and do import use chat store and see how we can get access to that state from our Zustand store. We do that by saying, hey, number is equal use chat store. And here from the whole state, from the whole store, we're only picking the dot number, the value that we're interested in. We can do it like this. Now this number, if I do console log number and look here, we see that we get access to the number 1 inside our screen. Number 1. And this number 1 is coming from the chat store. Good. What are we going to need here? Well, first of all, I would like to start creating the type, because this is the minimal example, but it would be nice to have a properly typed store. So for that reason, I'm going to start by creating the interface for our chat store. The interface like this, and we're going to give it to the create like this. Now, one of the properties, the states that we're gonna need is the chat history. That is going to be an array of chats. So let's go ahead and import the chat type from our types. We're going to have some actions as well, such as create new chat. The create new chat will receive a title of type string and will return the string. We will also have an add new message, which is going to have the chat ID and the message. So knowing the message, we're going to add to the history to a specific chat by ID. So let's also make sure to import the message here. Okay, this is the interface. Now we need to implement the values and the actions in our store down below. There is no longer a number here, so that's why we need the chat history, which we can initialize with empty array. And we need to implement the create new chat function and also the add new message to chat. This is going to be two functions. Creating a new chat, what we should do is to the whole chat history, we're only going to receive the title. The new chat of type chat is going to be, it's going to need an ID. The ID, we can make it using the date.now to string. The title is going to be title, and initially there is no messages. Having this new chat here, we are going to call the set method to make changes to our state. So what we're going to do is we're going to say, the AI is taking over set, and we're going to provide an update function, the existing state, and we're going to change this existing state. We're going to say the chat history using all the previous chat histories plus the new chat. Maybe the new chat, we can put it at the top of the list. So this set is looking very similar to how the setter from a normal React state works, where we provide a function, an update function that works based on the current state. So having this current state, we want to update the chat history, and we want to append the new chat at the beginning of everything else that we had in the chat history there. And we're going to return the ID that we just created, so maybe new chat dot ID, and based on that ID we're going to be able to redirect. Okay, let's see, hello world. Okay, so this create new chat is going to happen in the application index. So in the application index, we need access to this action. So first, we're going to import use chat store. And we're going to get access to the const create new chat using use chat store, and we need with selector to select what we are looking for, create new chat, like this. But we also need to send the first message there, so create new chat, but that's going to happen a bit in a second, step by step. So when we press handle send, we are going to call create new chat, and the title is going to be based on the message, based on the first 50 character of the message. So I'm going to slice like this. And back, we're going to receive a new chat ID. What we can do with this new chat ID, we can use the router to redirect to that newly created chat screen. So now if I come here and say hello and send it, I should be redirected to the chat with that chat ID. But on that chat ID, we need to properly handle that case because it's not working yet. What we also need to do is, now we are creating a new chat in our store. and we are updating this array. Let's use this chat history array in our drawer to display the correct items, the correct chat rooms. So from our components, history chat drawer, this chat history is no longer going to be from dummy data. We are going to take it from chat history, use chat store from our global Zustand store. And we're getting the chat history. And I can remove a JSON from here. If I reload, we're going to see that we do not have anything here. However, if I do here hello and send and open the drawer, we see the hello there. If I go back to the initial and do second and send it, it's going to be on top of everything. So that means that we are correctly reading the chat history and we're correctly creating new chat histories from the index screen. The only thing that we should also do is now inside the chat with ID, set the chat with ID. This, we know the ID. We don't need the number. We have a use chat store here. What we need here is we need to search the chat. Not from the dummy data, but from the store. And the way we're going to do is we're going to look at the state dot chat history dot find the chat where the ID is equal to this ID. This state is not any, this state is properly typed. So this chat has a proper string, yes. So now we are searching directly in the store for that chat with that ID. So if I go here to the hello, we should be on the correct screen. If I go here to the second, we should be there. If I go to the index and do third and send it, we should be landed on the correct screen. And we see the third here. Perfect. If I will reload the application, we'll lose everything, but we're gonna handle that in a second. Why am I overexposed? What's happening? I don't know. So we're gonna handle a bit later the persistent of a store. For now, what I want to do in the next step is to implement the method of sending a message. In my chat store, I'm gonna go here in the add new message, and when adding a new message, we know the chat ID and we know the new message. What we should do is we need to find in the chat history the chat with that ID, and we need to append the message there. So because this state is immutable, we're going to have to work a little bit tricky with it. So again, we are going to provide the update function. We're going to update the chat history, right? Here, the chat history. And we're going to do that by looping through the current chat history. We're going to map. We're going to say, hey, if the chat history, if the chat.id is equal to chat ID, in that case, we need to do the changes. So here we're going to do changes in a second, do changes. Otherwise, don't do anything. Just simply return the current the chat as it was before. Now, what changes do we need to do here? Well, we need to return the chat with everything from that chat, but with messages overridden, because we want to append there in that array the new message on top of all the chat messages that were in the chat room. This, I know if this can feel confusing, like what we are doing here, but this is this is how you work with immutable state. Like we cannot simply find an array and push it. We need to do that in an immutable way by creating new stuff. We couldn't push here. We had to create a new array and assign it there. So that's why this is happening. There is a way to do this better with mutability by using immer, and I'm teaching that. We're going more in depth into that in the React Native Mastery, and we're going to do that in the bootcamp as well when covering like more advanced use cases, and that makes a whole lot of a difference, especially when working with arrays and objects and we have to do these changes. But for now, if this is confusing, yeah, copy it and let's just move on because it's a bit harder to explain. Long story short is basically we are mapping through an array and we are keeping it the same if this is not the room that we are interested in, and we are updating the room that we are sending the message to by appending the new message to the existing list of messages there. So now if everything is working, we can get this add new message, and especially in the index, when we create a new chat room in the home screen, right? App index, we also need access to the add new message. So after creating the new chat room, we're going to add a new message with a new chat ID, with an ID, with role user, and with message, like this. So now if I'm going to reload the application and do hello world and send it, we're going to be redirected to the hello world, to the detail screen, and it's going to contain a message. Now we have to do the same inside the chat ID where we have handle send, because we are going to get access to the add new message from the chat store, and we're going to call here add new message to the ID. This is the chat room, right? Or we can do chat.id if you want, and then the new message is going to be ID date.now to, is it to locale string? 1 second. To string simply. To string role user and message. Chat ID can be undefined, so we can do also here, if chat is undefined, we should not be able to send a message. So that's actually good. And TypeScript told us like, hey, there is a case where the chat was not found with that ID, so probably you don't want to add a new message there. Perfect. Now if I do a follow up and send it, it's going to appear here at the top. 1, 2, 3, appear at the top. Maybe the messages were not supposed to be at the top, right? New chat, yeah. Messages and message. Okay, so yeah, what I did wrong is in the chat store, when adding a new message, I want the message to be at the end of a list. The new message at the end of a list. So if now I reload, there is no chats, but I can create one. Hello, I can send something. And if I do another message, it's going to be at the bottom. Perfect. So that is our Zustand store, working with state, with actions, updating stuff, accessing them, and so on. What do we need now is we would like to persist or to save this store on memory. So the next time we open the application, I would like to see the same chat history. For that, Zustand is doing it very easily because it's a simple middleware. what we have to do is we have to import persist from Zustand -middleware. We have to import the persist and also the create JSON storage. We're also going to need the async storage because that's where we're going to write it. So let's import async storage from React Native async storage. Now it's going to get a little bit tricky as well in terms of where we need to do, like what parentheses we need to write. But long story short is inside the create, this is the type of a create and this is the first bracket. That's where the create starts. Inside here, the first step is we need the persist. The persist will get another open parenthesis. And it's going to end somewhere here at the end. Add new message ends here. So it's going to oh my god, I always myself like get confused by this. Let me open the documentation where like here we have create set. So what I can do is I can take out this set, just knowing where it starts and where it finishes. Here it starts. So I can take it out completely. I will put it here and I'm going to comment it out. This is going to be the easiest. Now I have simply create. That means that inside create, we need to call it. You see, we need to call create and then we need to call it another time. Basically create returns as another function. So we call it another time and there we put persist. Persist, we call it, and now this is where the set is going to go. And later, it's an object with configurations. Configurations such as the name of our storage and the storage itself. So this object here. Now, I think I only have to bring in back the state here as the first parameter of a persist. And it's going to need a comma at the end. Let me copy everything and paste it here and uncomment it. And now it works. I think it's happy. We can review it in a second. I just want to check if it's working. It creates, it's here. And if I reload, I will see working back here. So it's saved as well. So now if I add stuff here and change it, it's going to be persisted on the storage. So the next time when I reload the application, I see my history as it was previously. So pay attention, like, yeah, we call create, we call that function, it gives us another function that we call with persist, and only then we do like all of our stuff. And here at the end is the configuration for persist, such as the name and the storage. Again, yeah, this like brackets can get confusing, but once you set it up and once everything is working, then it's super easy to add and work with this state. Sounds good? Let me double check if we covered everything here. So we set up Zustand store, we created the persisted store, we created state and actions, we have a chat history. We used it in the drawer, in the handle send, we updated the ID. Yeah, everything is done. So this is our global store. Global state management with Zustand. Oh, perfect. That was a big one. We have two more parts left in today's tutorial, and that's going to be the Expo API routes and the I think that's the only one, the major one. And in the Expo API routes, we are going to implement our backend and the integration with OpenAI. Okie dokie. So give me a second. I take a bit of fresh air and I'm back, and we continue with the backend, the most fun part. If you have any questions, feel free to leave them here and I'll try to answer them as I'm back. So 1 minute and we continue with the backend. All right. Emre is asking if I can show the Firebase Google sign-in with Expo. We can do something in future, but I didn't prepare it for this project. All right, so let's continue. Our next step is going to be to actually integrate with an AI, with an LLM provider. That usually happens by calling an API. When we call an API, we need to provide a secret key that identifies our project, because usually these APIs, they are paid. Even though most of them have free tier or some credit based, so you can test and play around with. When going to production, it involves some payment, some spending. So for that reason, the secret key that you are using to call the, for example, OpenAI API or Gemini or Anthropic and so on, that secret key should be stored and protected very well and hidden from anyone to have access to it. Because by having that API key, anyone can abuse that key, and you're going to be the one who is going to incur the charges. For that reason, even though we can call and interact directly from our client side, from the mobile application, we can call OpenAI, and it's going to work perfectly fine. The problem is that in that case, we are using the secret key in the client-side code. Client-side code is the code that you are sending to the client device, and a client device you do not have access to. Like, it's the client, it's the user who has access to. Similar to how in a web browser you can do inspect element and see all the source code, is the same thing with an application. It's a little bit harder to access the source code and these things, but it's still possible with, and a person who knows what they're doing, they're going to get access to your secret key easily if you're using it directly in your client side. So for that reason, all the secrets that we are using, they should be used in a secure server-side environment that your clients, your users, do not have access to. Then your client side, like the mobile application, is simply going to send a request to your backend, and then the backend, using the secret key only available in your backend, is going to interact with, for example, OpenAI. In some cases, you might think that, okay, but if the client side calls the backend and the backend calls OpenAI, it feels like a middleware. Yes, in a way it is, but you have a lot more control over what's happening with your API key. You're not exposing it, and you can add a lot of other security measures between your client and your backend, such as authentication, such as rate limiting, such as blocking a user if he's abusing your API, and so on. This way, you have control of how you want the interactions with API providers like OpenAI to happen. For that reason, we need a backend. In a lot of cases, you would have to create a separate project, a separate, for example, notjust backend, think about hosting it somewhere, and so on. However, Expo Router introduced, not very recently, it's already like probably more than 1 year ago, introduced API routes. With API routes, we can write server-side code directly in our Expo application, and that code is not going to be included in your mobile application. It's only going to be included on the server environment. And I'm going to show you exactly how that works. We're going to use an Expo API route for our use case to integrate the communication between our backend and OpenAI. Let's go ahead and I'll show you the documentation. Expo API routes. Here it is. You can read more about that. And to create an API route, we need to make sure that the web output is server, because the API routes is part of the web output, and it's only available when the web output is a server rendered web application. So for that reason, I'm gonna go ahead and go to app.json. Under web, we're gonna say that the output is a server. What? Web output server. Yeah, server. Now, that's everything that we should do right now. We are ready to create our first API route. API routes live in the same app directory, and you can create it in any folder here. However, I like to group them together into an API folder. This is super optional, and it's only for me. You can create them in the root as well. And to create an API route, all we have to do is put this suffix plus API after the name of our file. And if I go back here, we're going to create our first API route. We're going to create the API directory in the source folder, and we're going to create the chat folder to group all the API calls related to the chat. So in the API, I'm going to create chat, and in the chat, I'm going to create index.ts. Now, in this index.ts, it's not yet an API route because the file name should end with plus API. So I'm going to rename it to index plus API.ts. From here, what we have to do is we have to export a function with some specific names. Either get, post, put, patch, delete, head, and options. These all are HTTP methods, so the HTTP method request is going to be mapped to a specific function. So if I copy this one from here, saying that whenever a GET request is being sent to /API/chat, then we should return a JSON hello world. Now if I'm going to go ahead and do npm start, in my case, it's running, like if you go a bit up and see web is waiting on, copy this URL. In my case, it's localhost 8082. In your case, it should be 8081. And put this URL in your browser and then do /API/chat. If everything is working, you should see the hello world. You might not see it formatted like this. It can be like a raw like this. But this is your newly created API using Expo Router API routes. Now we are running in development, and they are being bundled and executed by your Metro server without us having to do anything else. However, when you think about these API routes, think about them as completely separate thing than your mobile application, because when we build the application for production, the code from here is not going to be available in our client-side application, in the Android and iOS application, and even in the client-side web application. Even though it's here, it lives here, it's not going to be in the client side, and that's why it's going to be safe to use here secret values. Later, when we go to production, we're going to have to think, how do we host these API routes? Because a server should be hosted on a backend should be hosted on a server and be accessible from anywhere. We're going to cover that as well. But think about that now it's working because it's bundled by the same server that is bundling the JavaScript here. And if I do here a console log get request received and send it again, you're going to see the logs also here in the Metro bundler. I don't get what Expo API routes does. What part is confusing? Let me know a very specific question. Like, what it does, with Expo API routes, you create server-side code directly in your Expo router application. The code is in the same project, but then when it's bundled, everything related to the mobile application goes to an APK or an .IAPA for iOS, and everything that is related, for example, to the API routes are being hosted on a server in a safe environment where you can write backend, authentication logic, and stuff like that. Database queries, interacting with OpenAI. Okay, let's go back to our guide. And let's see, like for now, we interacted it by simply sending the GET request from our browser. But we can do that, we can call an API route directly from our client side by using fetch as you would normally fetch a REST API. So in the handle send inside the index, after we do router.push, we need to send this message to the backend. So let's copy this part and let's go to our application index, and in the handle send, what we are doing here is saying, hey, send a GET request to localhost 8081. In my case, it's 8082 because I have another server running on 81. In your case, leave it 81. /API/chat, because we have up API chat, and here is index, and index can be skipped. And then get the data and display it here. Now, let's look at the logs. If I say hello, maybe not here, it should be in the index. Hello, if I do that, get request received, and nothing else. Let me reload. Hello. We see the log from our client side, which is the response from the fetch request that we've done to the server. As easy as that. We can also add an origin URL because I don't like to write localhost where even like the backend URL always here. And what we can do is we can open up.json and specify the under plugins for the Expo router, the origin. So we can go to up.json under plugins. For the Expo router, I'm going to put it into an array. So a new array. And here I'm going to specify the origin option with the URL of my local API. Your local API should be localhost 80. Come on, where is it? Index. It should be this one. So origin, like this. I'm going to put localhost 8082, in your case 8081. Later, this is going to be the URL to the production site. But for now, this is the local development server. So now having this origin, if we, whenever we are sending a fetch request, do not specify the origin and only specify the route, then Expo router will know to use this first part of a URL, will put everything together, and it's still going to work. But the fetches will look very easy, like it looks like we're fetching locally, but it's actually fetching from a server. So yeah, we see hello world. Perfect. OpenAI, the fun part. Let me do here git status, git add, git commit, Expo router API route setup. Now let's go ahead and vamp our newly created API route. And here is where we're going to do the interaction with OpenAI. For that, I encourage you to open OpenAI docs. They have quite good documentation, like from what I know. And here in JavaScript, we see how we can interact with OpenAI. But first, we need to install OpenAI library. So in our guide, you see that we need to run npm install OpenAI. Clear. npm install OpenAI. Then we need to get an API key. To create an API key, we need to go into our dashboard on OpenAI. We're gonna go under API keys, and we're gonna press create a new secret key. let's go live stream, default project, permission all, and let's create it. I'm gonna copy it from here, and we're going to go and create a .env file, open secret key. Let me double check something. Yeah, I'm going to create a file .env, and I'm going to call OpenAI. I forgot what's the name, but basically I'm going to paste it first, because I think if I go here and what's the usual name for the API key? The environment variable key. Well, I'm sorry?
I don't think there is one, like OpenAI API secret.
Yeah, like this way, let's call it OpenAI secret key. And this is our environment variable. In environment variables, if I do now git status, we're gonna see that if I don't do anything, this environment variable, this environment file, is going to be added to my Git repository. I don't want that because this is going to contain my secret keys. For that reason, I'm gonna go into git ignore, and I'm going to add the .env file here. Now, if I do git status, I no longer see the .env being tracked here. That's good. Another thing that is important to understand about these environment variables is that normal environment variables, by default, are not going to be accessible through the client-side code. And only Expo public, and here let's say ABC, only the variables that start with Expo public are going to be accessible in the client-side code. So that's also important to understand the difference between a secret environment variable and one that will be included in your client-side code. So here we just have it OpenAI secret key. All good. We can go into the index here and we're gonna have access to it using process.env. Let's go ahead and import OpenAI from OpenAI. Let's create a new instance of OpenAI and provide here the API key from process.env, OpenAI secret key. Let's make sure that it's the same name. Perfect. Yeah, we are using it. We need to restart the server because we have a new environment variables. Restarted the server. And what we need to do is we need to implement the interactions with OpenAI. First of all, we're going to change the function from a GET request to a POST request. A POST request can also have a body, and the body is going to be the message that the user is sending that we want to receive and send it further to OpenAI. So the message that the user is sending, we're going to get through the request.json. We need to make this function async here. And now this message we can, if you want, I can be really step by step, and we can say console log get request received with the message. Not messages, but message. Now let's go back in our index file, the client-side code where we send this fetch, and it's no longer going to be a simple fetch request. We're going to have to provide some options because the method is a post request, And the body is going to be a JSON.stringify, and is going to contain the message that we want to send. And I think it's going to be, yeah, it's going to be this message. Let's see if we are correctly sending this message through a post request to our API route. To do that, I'm going to reload. I'm going to say new message request. If I send, we see get request receive, and the message that we got there is new message request. Good. That means that we are taking it from the client side, we're sending it all the way to our backend, we're getting it from the request, and now we can use it with OpenAI to provide the output. The interactions with OpenAI is just this couple of lines of code. So I'm going to copy it from here. I'm going to replace it with this one because it's really nothing much. We have a try catch method because sometimes something can happen here. So if there is an error, we are returning a response with status code 500 saying that an unexpected error happened. But in the happy scenario, if everything is working fine, we are using OpenAI responses.create. We are specifying what model to use, in this case GPT 4.1, and the input is going to be the message. Then we're going to get the response back, and we can return to the client side just the output text as the response message. That's it. Let's go back to our client side here index and say that, hey, this data that you receive, let's see what's there. If I go here and do a clear and say hello, it's not going to work here, it needs from a new chat. Hello. If I send it like this, we should see a response message. Hello, how can I help you today? And this is coming from OpenAI directly. So what do we have to do? We need to get this data and append it to the message, to the global store of messages. That's going to happen. Let's scroll down a bit. Yeah. We're gonna do that one in a second. Now that we have everything ready, yes, we can update both index and ID to the handle send functions. Starting with the index, in the handle send, we are sending a request method post. You can also specify headers, and the data that we get back, we are taking the data and we are creating a response message that is being added to the chat state. So I'm going to copy these 3 blocks of code, checking if response is okay, then building a local message that is going to be appended to our global state, global store. So let's go back, and this data we do boom. If response is not okay, then we throw a new error. Otherwise, we append it here, and instead of chat ID, it should be chat. How is it? New chat ID. Okay, let's see if it works by reloading and starting a new chat saying, tell me a joke. That was super fast. So as you can see, it's being added here. But now another one is not gonna work because we only implemented this request in the new screen, but we need to do that in the detail screen as well. So in the chat ID, when we do handle send, we need to do the same thing here. So in the ID, in the handle send, there is one more step, but I'm going to cover that in a second. Let's just take the try until catch. So same things. We are sending a request to our API route. We are sending the message there. We get back the data. We make sure that the request response is okay. It didn't throw an error. And then we create the AI message from that is going to be added to the local store. So let's copy this and add it in the handle send of the chat ID screen. Let's do that. The only thing we don't have yet is the previous response ID. I'm going to cover that in a second. But now if I reload and go into a chat details screen, tell me a joke about JavaScript. About not us, but JavaScript. Let's see if it's working. Yes, JavaScript developer go broke. Perfect. So now it's working. The interactions between client and server and our API route and OpenAI, everything is working. The only thing that we will add now is being able to remember the history, because if I now write another one, what I mean is tell me another joke, but OpenAI doesn't understand. Like, could you please clarify what do you mean by another one? That's because we did not link, or we did not send like what is this message and what thread it goes to. In the past, that required us to send the whole list of messages from the thread, but now OpenAI improved this experience, and it works by sending an ID of a previous response. So every time OpenAI gives us a response, we need to store the previous response ID, and then we need to send it back. What will that involve? That would involve finding the ID of the previous message. So we're looking in the chat, we're looking at the last message in that list, and then we're taking the response ID. And that is going to be the previous response ID. And we are going to do here in the chat ID send. So having the previous response ID, we're going to send it to our API route as a property called previous response ID, which we should go in the API route. And the same way as we receive the message, we're going to receive here the previous response ID. And when we do a request to OpenAI, we can provide it here as previous response ID like this. But it can also be missing if it's a new thread. So for that reason, if you scroll up, you're going to see how we can add it conditionally, only if it exists. So I'm going to copy this line, and I'm going to say, hey, if previous response ID exists, then set it to the previous response ID field. Something like that. And the response should also send here, right? The response ID like this. Not only the response message, but the response ID as well. Then we need to check in the ID in the response. We do data.response ID. So we are storing, and now everything should be connected and it should work. Let's do a reload and even start a new chat. Tell me a joke. Another one, and if everything is okay, it should understand that it's another joke. Why did that? It didn't add what?
You didn't add response ID in index where you start the chat.
Yeah, let me double check, because in the details screen of a chat, I'm adding the response ID, but in the index on the home screen, I'm also adding it. So yeah, that's why I say that it's working. So in the another one, it knows like what is the previous response, it knows like the context, and it doesn't have a joke. And with that being said, I think we are finished here with our OpenAI integration, right?
Yeah, now just the animation scroll down if you have to longer text.
Okay. This one, right?
Don't think, I don't think so.
Yeah.
In the same.
Okay, so let's go ahead and do a git add, git commit minus open AI integration. And what I want to also cover here is, for example, if we're gonna have like large messages, tell me a story, 3 chapters. Let's see what's gonna happen. It's gonna take a bit of time for it to be generated, but then it's going to be returned here. I really like how nicely the Markdown is rendered. And we manually have to scroll down until the end. Or if we're here and we send another message, that's what we have to do, like manually scroll down here. In a lot of cases, to provide a better user experience, would like to automatically scroll the list down when a new message is being added to the list. To do that, we're going to follow this new message chapter, and we're going to use a reference to the flat list. And by having a reference to the flat list, we can programmatically call the method. Where is it? Flat list ref. We can call scroll to the end, and then it will automatically scroll to the end. To do that, we need, let me double check that.
User.
Yeah, we need the useref hook. Yeah, a useref hook imported from React. Import useref from React. We define the useref here at the top as flat list ref equal useref of type flat list, and initially is going to be null. Flat list or null. But it's not here. Sorry, I need to be in another screen. I was in the index, but I need to be on the chat ID. So we do the same. At the top, import useref. In the component, we define the flat list ref, useref of type flat list or null, and we initialize it with null. Now we need to assign it to the flat list here. Reference equal to flat list ref. Now whenever the flat list is rendered, it's going to be assigned a reference to that flat list to this flat list ref, and we can call any methods by doing flat list ref.current dot some method on that list. Where are we going to and when are we going to call that method? We're going to do that when a new message arrives. So this is our chat room. The chat room has chat.messages. That's the flat list. So we can create a use effect that is going to be triggered when a new message or when the array of messages changes. This use effect imported from React. Now, if chat messages updates, what we're going to do is we're going to call flatlist ref.current with a question mark because it can be null as well. We're going to do scroll to end, and you can here provide animated true as well to make it animated scroll. I think that's it, but in some cases we need to add some delay to this function. I think that we need to add delay, especially, for example, we're going to implement streaming.
And switching between chats sometimes also messed up.
Yeah, or when we navigate between chats, like this one can also be messed up, because first we need to wait a little bit for the messages to be there, and then we're going to animate. So for that reason, we're going to put this one into a delay the execution of this one by like 100 milliseconds. To do that, we can do set timeout, and here like 100 milliseconds. And what should happen in the timeout, it should happen like after 100 milliseconds, we need to scroll to the end. In order to avoid memory leaks, we're going to get access to this timeout, because if, for example, we call this use effect like multiple times, we want to clear that timeout when the component unmounts and to avoid memory leaks. So we've cleared timeout and given the timeout ID, we're going to clear it up. Now, if I'm going to say, tell me a long story, let's see what's going to happen. Well, tell me a long story. Come on. Let's see if it's going to animate nicely. It's loading, it's loading, it's loading. It's a very long story. Okay, so as you can see, like as soon as it reached, like we got back. And we can also test it by scrolling up a little bit and writing ourselves a message saying hello. And if I send it, it's going to scroll automatically down. Nice. That's exactly what we wanted, and we can achieve that with the scroll to end. Git add, git commit -m, and this was scroll the flat list on new messages. Perfect. And from this lesson, we are done, right? And for today, there is also the loading state. The loading state, maybe we're gonna do tomorrow animated, or in general. Yeah, I think it's going to be good, like to cover it tomorrow. Yeah, that's gonna be tomorrow, and so far we have amazing progress, because with this, with everything that we've done so far, we have a fully functional, full stack AI chat application. Users can start new chats. If I go here to ChatGPT, it can start new chats. It's going to use OpenAI as an LLM model to provide answers. We are interacting with the OpenAI API from a safe environment, from our backend. Tomorrow, we're going to learn how to deploy this backend, this API route to production, to be able to be used in production environments from our application that will be built for iOS and Android. But everything is ready and everything is working. All of these chats and with a history, they are stored with Zustand and persisted on the device, and we can move through different chat histories, and we can see how everything looks there. So yes, that is the progress for today. Tomorrow is the second day of a challenge, because remember, this is a 2 days challenge. Today was more beginner friendly. Tomorrow we're gonna cover more advanced concepts. We're gonna go into images and handling images, both for generating images and sending a user image. We're gonna work with audio and some other bonus content that we are preparing for you. This is going to be like a real chat application with all the features that you need to integrate in applications, in the ideas that you have. So I hope you learned a lot today. I'll see you tomorrow. And I just wanted to remind you that one lucky winner that we're going to choose from everyone who have signed up for this challenge are going to receive a limited place in the summer bootcamp, which is something huge that we are preparing for this summer, where during 8 weeks, me, Lucas, and the whole notjust.dev team are going to work together with 25 students and coach you to master React Native, build amazing applications, and get to the next level in your mobile development journey. If you're interested, you can check out more details on notjust.dev/bootcamp. And next week, we're doing the enrollments. I think it's already open if you find the link, if you are that curious. Anyway, that was the first day of the challenge. I hope you enjoyed this. I'll see you tomorrow and we implement even more. Let me know in the comments what other features you'd like me to cover tomorrow, and we can pick some bonus features from the audience. All right. Thank you very much.